Post the 2024 elections last year, a government of national unity was formed by 10 political parties, ushering in a new era in South African coalition politics. But for the first time in the country's 30 years of democracy, no party received a parliamentary outright majority. The GNU identified key priorities that were to guide it for the next 5 years, including driving inclusive growth, job creation, reducing poverty, and tackling the high cost of living. But a year on, is the GNU still on track to reaching its targets as outlined by the statement of intent that was signed by the different political parties? To help us discuss this, we're joined now by Dr. Oscar van Heerden, a Senior Research Fellow at the University of Johannesburg Centre for African Diplomacy and Leadership. Dr. van Heerden, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning to the viewers.
So a year on, what is your overall assessment of how the GNU has fared?
Well, you know, besides the fact that there has been some birth pains, obviously, at the beginning, different parties were trying to find their feet. How do they work together? And for the better part of the initial few months, people were worried about the resilience of the GNU. But I think we can safely say that it's shaky but stable, and every political party is trying to pull their weight with regards to the portfolio. Of course, this is a completely new chapter in our politics, as you've indicated, Sakina, and I think everyone is also seeing it as a learning curve.
Now, many South Africans, Dr. van Heerden, had high hopes for this government of national unity after its formation post the 2024 general elections. If we look at what they have done so far, how would you say, or what would you say have been some of their achievements that they can claim so far as a government of national unity that speaks to that hope that South Africans had?
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is, Sakina, a year is, of course, a very short period to make such an assessment. But suffice to say, I think the different portfolios are certainly trying to pull their weight. One of the things that we've experienced, for example, which is a bit new, is some healthy competition that's there. I mean, we see the Democratic Alliance ministers in particular advertising their achievements, constantly telling us through the media that they've achieved X, Y, and Z. It's not necessarily the done thing, but I think we can safely say that progress and some progress have been made in those portfolios, in the DA portfolios, at Home Affairs. But at the same time, they've also seen that it can backfire. As we've seen with the Minister of Basic Education, making promises about pit latrines and so forth, and then discovering that the problem is much bigger and can't just be eradicated overnight, and so on and so forth. We've seen some progress being made in local government, with the IFP being at the helm there. And then, of course, much publicity around the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie from the PA. And again, accountability issues coming in where people are talking about expenditure, how much you pay for tips in hotels and so forth. So I think it's an all-round eye-opener for many. The leader of the opposition party in his portfolio in agriculture also having some upheaval because of our relations with the United States of America. I don't think a lot of them have anticipated the dynamics there. And then, of course, with the statement of intent, Sakina, we see that there was a few challenges around international relations and who exactly is in charge of that policy being spearheaded by the presidency and so forth. So it makes for interesting times. I don't think if we have to be honest, there has been any significant progress made with regards to the big triple challenges of unemployment. It remains high. We know that poverty is still very much afflicting the majority of our people. And then, of course, the inequality. So, but as I say, a year on is a bit early to judge them on those three major challenges. I think the intention is still there to address it. But of course, as many now realize, it's not so easy to govern.
And speaking of intent, if we look at some of the issues that you've just mentioned there, Dr. van Heerden, some of the internal party dynamics, do you think, the spirit of unity that these members of the Government of National Unity were supposed to embody, do you think that their individual internal party dynamics are actually having a negative impact on that unity, or do you think that the GNU is actually able to circumvent some of those problems and continue on the right trajectory?
Yeah, I think that it is, as I indicated, Sakina, it is about a learning curve. I think that the party that has the most in terms of those internal issues is the Democratic Alliance. I think the Federal Council has also tried to wrap their heads around how do we govern with the ANC, our arch enemies. Similarly with the ANC, a lot of internal dynamics. We've seen Premier Lesofie not necessarily towing the line and saying no, doesn't want to go into a coalition with the DA and trying something new in Gauteng. We will have to wait and see whether that will backfire, particularly in the next local government elections coming next year. But I think that the reality is that it's a very good thing for our democracy that we have these internal dynamics in various political parties that are trying to make it work in terms of governing or co-governing. And as I say, they're stumbling across some problems, of course, but they're trying to work it out. And every now and again, we see the party leaderships at each other's throats, between Helen Zille and Fikile Mbalula, going for each other. But similarly, I still say this is a good thing. This is good for our democracy. It strengthens our democracy. And the reality, Sakina, is that coalition politics is here to stay.
It's Youth Month in South Africa, and unfortunately, youth unemployment remains stubbornly unacceptably high. And I know you said it's too early to judge, but of course, for young people who are waiting, who are jobless, they are not looking at this in terms of, it's only been a year. They were promised a better South Africa, and they are expecting delivery on that promise. People expecting service delivery issues to be tackled. They also looking at this and saying, they expected people to hit the ground running. So that's what the critics will say in pointing out that progress has been slow. As you said, perhaps people learning that it's slightly more difficult to govern. But with that being said, some of the critics believe that this Government of National Unity is actually just about political survival for some of the parties that are part of this. Do you agree with that sentiment? And if so, how is that likely to impact further progress for the Government of National Unity?
Yeah, I think to your question, I don't agree with those sentiments. I don't think it's just about political survival. I think that the responsible thing to have done post the general election, where, as you indicated, no party received more than 50%, was to begin to look at various options that is in the interest of the country. And I think we need to commend all the parties that came to the Government of National Unity, because they put their personal party politics aside and said the ANC doesn't have 50%. The Constitution is very clear that there's a tight time frame to form a government. Let's see if we can knock this together in the interest of progress and moving forward. And I think a lot of international pundits, a lot of international and foreign governments have commended the South African government for actually being able to pull it off, because the politics in the world is so polarized. I mean, if we can imagine the Republicans and the Democrats in the United States actually forming a coalition government to take the country forward, it's an impossibility at this point in time with Donald Trump as the head. So I think we've achieved something in the interest of people. But as you say, the challenges are real. I think that Minister Parks Tau is trying his level best to push for trade and industry to actually begin to take shape. Minister Steenhuisen has realized that the agriculture sector, farming, which is a big employer, it needs to be on the straight and narrow, and we need to look for new markets and cement current existing trade relations. I think that Home Affairs also understands that regional integration, making it easier for everyone to get the necessary documentations and so forth to facilitate employment. Because remember, it's not only that foreigners are looking for work, some of them are also here to create employment and job opportunities. And of course, from the presidency side, we have the YES program, youth employment services and so forth. We've just seen a big contingent of young people being able to get into basic education as teacher assistants, thousands of them. So I think government is geared towards trying to create some jobs. It's difficult. The economy is stubbornly not wanting to grow, but I think everyone knows that it is about the economy. Once you can grow the economy, it will take care of the rest of things. I think this is also the reason why it's important that President Ramaphosa found himself in Canada with the largest economies at the G7 instead of being here for Youth Day, because he realizes the trade agreements, the side deals that he can make with those governments is ultimately in the best interest of the youth of South Africa.
But in the end, it has to be about the difference that this makes, I would imagine, Dr. van Heerden. You speak about the teacher assistants, for example. The point is they struggle to get paid. So, unless that changes, it's more of the same. And as you say, perhaps slightly early to judge, but of course we will wait and see. But I have to quickly ask you, just briefly, what do you think are the major political risks that the GNU faces going forward?
I think from all the various sectors in society, labor, civil society, government, and of course the private sector, everyone is in agreement that the GNU will have to hold together. The glue that keeps them together will have to work. Falling apart, any of the parties walking out of the GNU will actually spell disaster for South Africa. It will mean that those parties that didn't want to be part of the GNU, like the MKP, like the EFF, we would have to then consider going into an alliance with them, which in itself will have unintended consequences because they are simply not in agreement, even with the Constitution of the Republic, I may add. So it will spell a very dark future.
Just a quick one. The conflict in the Middle East at the moment, how is that likely to impact the GNU, given that there are parties in the GNU who are very clear in their support for Israel, and the ANC and some of the other parties there perhaps not on the same page in that regard? How is this conflict likely to impact what this GNU is supposed to do?
I think at the end of the day, as I said, parties will have to look at this as a republic, as a country. I think the South African government over the last 30 years have had a foreign policy that is based on human rights, that is premised on international law and on ethics. And I think that the various parties will have to look at it in that framework. When we make decisions about who we support, what we condemn, it will be within that framework, not about personal party political politics.
We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time, Dr. Oscar van Heerden, Senior Research Fellow at the University of Johannesburg Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership, talking to us about the progress or the lack done by the Government of National Unity a year since it was formed.